From a basement somewhere on Music Row, it's the Nitty Gritty from Music City with your host, Brent Browning.
Oh, yeah. Uh-oh. Dropped my paper there. We're going to get down to it this week, son. Oh, man, I love the intro of that song. Welcome, 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 folks. Oh, whew, holy smokes. Do I have a show for you today? I'm so glad you decided to join me this week. Thank you for downloading, subscribing, and sharing the Nitty Gritty from Music City with your peers, your friends, your colleagues. Hell, share it with the folks you don't like, too. It might make y'all friends again, or you could just wind up frenemies. You know what? You can do that if you want to, but don't take my advice on the frenemies thing because I'm no Dr. Phil. I know nothing about this psychological stuff. I'm just here to deliver a country, or not necessarily a country, but I'm here to deliver a podcast about music to you each week. Either way, thank you for sharing. You'll definitely want to share this episode if you're a fan of country music, if you're a fan of music in general, good music that is. You will absolutely love the show today. My guest has 14, count them, 14 number one hits, 23 top 10 singles, 4 platinum albums, and 5 gold albums to his credit. Man, just who am I talking about? I'm not going to keep you hanging on any longer. My guest today is the talented Mr. Mark Chesnutt. So happy to talk with Mark about his new, long-awaited album, Tradition Lives. I'm going to talk to Mark about what took him so long to get back into the studio. I believe he said it's been about 6 or 8 years since he released anything new. We'll talk about some of the songs on the Tradition Lives album. You'll hear how he got started in the music business and find out who was on Mark Chesnutt's musical Mount Rushmore. All of that is this week on the 23rd episode of the Nitty Gritty from Music City. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. I can't say it enough. I mentioned earlier in the opening just then of the show, if you like what you hear, subscribe, rate the show, and leave a comment in iTunes, Podcast Addict, or your favorite podcast player. The subscribe button will claim your spot on the Nitty Gritty train, and I will make a promise to you that you never miss an episode. The show will be automatically downloaded to your favorite podcast player each week, and it will never cost you a dime. Not one red penny. Have you ever seen a red penny? I hadn't either. And that's thanks to our great sponsors like Woodshed Studio and our friends over at Mineralizer. More about those great sponsors as the podcast travels through this 23rd episode. Before we get to the nitty-gritty with Mark Chesnutt this week, I'd like to let you know about all of the great outlets you can listen to the podcast and reach out to me. The Nitty-Gritty from Music City is on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. If you're on Twitter, I'd like for you to come over and like and follow the podcast. I always say who's going to be on the podcast a few days in advance over on Twitter. I'd be happy to hear from you, too. If there's someone you'd like to hear on the show, drop me a line. Let me know who it is. And, just let me know who you'd like to hear. Your favorite songwriter, your favorite singer, your favorite comedian, hell, your ventriloquist. Hell, I talk to them all. You can reach me at 615-NITTY-GRITTY over on Twitter. If you want to see the artist, you can head over to the Instagram and see the pictures of all the wonderful artists who join me in the studio each week or by the phone. The Instagram handle is the same as our Twitter handle at 615-NITTY-GRITTY. If you don't want to download one of the super podcast players thousands of people are listening to the show on each month, I don't really see why you wouldn't want to do that. You can listen to the podcast on Facebook. Now, Facebook isn't a great way to contact the show, but it is a great way to listen. The web address is www.facebook.com/nitty.gritty.3958. If you're not a social media kind of person, you can always stay up to date on the Nitty Gritty from Music City website, which is www.ngfmc.com. First letter in every word of Nitty Gritty from Music City. Let's take a look at what's on my mind this week in today's blabber. Now, I'm going to take a few minutes to brag on the boys and lady in my band tonight. I don't generally like talking about me or my music on the podcast because that's not what this show is about, but I think I can make one exception tonight. It's Wednesday night, and I'm just now getting around to recording the podcast. I've been pretty busy this week, and Wednesdays are usually my day off so I can get the podcast out to you. I had to fill in for a friend of mine tonight at Tootsie's from 6 to 10. And let me just say, my boys in the band were firing on all 8 cylinders tonight. I had my regular players, Mr. Steve Nolan on guitar, Mark Ramsey on the bass guitar. Now, Ramsey played for Blake Shelton for a while, which is pretty cool. Austin Kirkaruto on drums. Now, Austin just came off the road recently playing for Craig Campbell. And let me tell you something, that boy there is solid. That's a solid drum player out there. And we can't forget about Miss Grace Maher. She sang with me tonight, too. Man, the crowd was in it. It was packed elbow to elbow, and everyone was having a good time. I think we only played about 3 slow to mid-tempo songs. People were requesting songs left and right. They were screaming after every song we played. Man, it sounded like if they would have been any louder, they would have blown the roof slap off of Tootsie's. You'd think that every night in Nashville would be like that, but, you know, it's really not. But every once in a while, you get that crowd that's ready to let loose and let the hair down. Well, tonight was that night. This crowd was there to let loose. We had international honky-tonkers in there. We had some people from England, Switzerland, and Canada, and boy, they were all ready. They were rowdy and ready to go. I even sang one of my original songs called Just Me Missing You, and not one person went to the bathroom when I said I was going to play an original song. They blew the roof off when we got done playing it, too. Man, I tell you, the crowd was turned up to 11 tonight. Thanks to the boys and lady in the band for giving 100% tonight, man. You guys and gal, man, I tell you what, y'all rock. It was hands down the best show of the year tonight for me. I could go on and on about it, but I'm going to quit bragging on the band, and let's see who celebrated a birthday this week. Fellow Georgia native, Mr. Zach Brown, turned 38 on Sunday, along with Chad Brock, who turned 53. You know, Chad Brock was a wrestler in WCW. That's World Championship Wrestling for you folks that don't keep up with it. From 1994 to 1996. I knew there was something else about that guy that I like. Dean Sams of the supergroup Lone Star turned 50 on Wednesday. And fellow Tootsie singer, Miss Terry Clark, turned 48 on Friday, along with the voice, Mr. Vern Gosden. He would have celebrated 82 years on Friday, but we lost Mr. Gosden back in 2009. Now, he was the voice on the radio before there was a voice on TV. The OG, or the OV, I guess I should say. Oh, that's enough of that. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty for Music City with my guest this week, Mr. Mark Chesnutt. I want to say thank you for downloading the nitty-gritty for Music City again this week, and I want to say a big thank you to Woodshed Studios. Are you looking for a recording studio to help bring your lyrics to life without having to take out a loan or a car to do it? Does the garage have too much stuff in it for the band to practice? If so, Woodshed Studios is the place to be for your recording and rehearsal studio needs. Woodshed Studio uses Cubase Pro 8 software and Melodyne editor to fix some issues. There's a vocal booth, drum room, and a control room. Bring your band to practice. If you want to record but don't have access to Nashville's best players, Woodshed Studio can provide some of Nashville's best musicians for your recordings. Woodshed Studio guarantees to beat all studio prices in and around Nashville, Tennessee. Don't wait. Bring your songs to life at Woodshed Studios. Call Big Country Dave Sermon, 615-779-4657, and use promo code NITTYGRITTY to get an even cheaper rate. That number again is 615-779-4657. Promo code NITTYGRITTY. Ladies and gentlemen, he has 14 number one hits, 23 top 10s, 4 platinum albums, 5 gold albums, and he was 1993 CMA Horizon Award winner. It is my pleasure to have on the line with me today, Mr. Mark Chesnutt. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Man, I'm so glad to have you. Thank you for being on the podcast. I've had lots of your fans reach out to me on Twitter asking for you to be on the show, and here you are. Where are you right now?
I'm at home. I'm at home just outside of Beaumont, Texas, taking a few days off, and my son's home from the Marines for a few days, so I'm spending some time with him and getting ready. Of course, we got to leave Thursday, get back on the road. But just hanging around, taking it easy, talking to you.
Well, man, I sure am glad you are talking to me. Mark, I'll be honest with you, man. Not only am I a singer-songwriter, an entertainer, and podcast host, I'm also a huge Mark Chesnutt fan. Your music...
Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Your music has inspired songs I've written, and you've introduced me to Texas music. I've sang your songs for as long as I can remember, and I still sing them at my shows today. Thank you for inspiring me since 1990, and thank you for releasing this new album, Tradition Lives. How long has it been, Mark, since you put out a new album?
Too damn long, I can tell you that. I'm really not sure. I hear some people have said 6 years, some say 8 years. I don't know. To me, it feels like my very first album. I'm so excited about this new CD that my fans have been asking for a lot of years. I know for years they've been asking, when am I going to put out a new CD with all brand new songs?
Mm-hmm.
And so that now that I finally got the opportunity to do that with my new label, and I just can't say enough of how proud I am of this album. It took us about almost 3 years to get it all together.
Mm-hmm.
But when we finally got it done, I think it shows. You know, taking all that time. First time I've ever taken this long. You know, usually in Nashville, back in the 90s, they would put records out like they're made on an assembly line. Mm-hmm. Every couple months every year you had a new album out, and every couple months you had a new single out.
Mm-hmm.
And you were pushed, to hurry up and be on schedule. Well, thank God I don't have to worry about that anymore.
I'm telling you,
just take my time and do what I do best.
Mm-hmm. Mark, I could go through every track on this album and ask you about each song, but since we don't have time to talk about each song, I think, now, I'm not positive, but I think I've narrowed it down to the ones I'd like to ask you about the most. There's so many great songs on this album. There's really one word to describe this album, and that word is country.
Yeah.
Oh, did you pick the songs yourself, or did someone help with the process on this album?
I did it myself. Mm-hmm. I picked every song. My producer, Jimmy Ritchie, you probably know who I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
He is a great musician, songwriter, and producer. And, he's quite a bit younger than me. And he has produced every album that I've recorded since the Sony days. Since the Sony album that I had out several years ago. Wow. And we have worked on several independent projects together, and I made some of the best music I have ever made working with him. And he really captures my sound and what I'm supposed to sound like. And he never has tried to push me, leaned on me to cut or not cut a song. Mm-hmm. It don't matter if he's written it or not. He has no interest in that. He just wants me to cut the very best music that I can, and because he knows I'm going to have to be singing them. It's my record. Mm-hmm. So he told me, take my time. You pick all the songs. Go on. We're not going to, even my management for the very first time, we're not going to be involved in the music at all.
Nice.
We're going to just turn it over to you. And so for a couple of years, I listened for songs. I picked songs for this thing. And, man, I couldn't believe some of the great songs that I didn't put on this album. But they are still writing. There's still some great writers in Nashville writing some great traditional-sounding country music. Mm-hmm. Some of the same guys that are writing, well, actually, these same guys that are writing the current-sounding country music, mm-hmm. What they're calling country music now.
Yeah.
But they're still writing the kind of stuff I do, the mm-hmm. kind of stuff they moved to town to do.
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, tell me the story behind the lead track, I've Got a Quarter in My Pocket.
That song was written by a friend of mine that used to play in the band with Gary Allen.
Mm-hmm. I knew I'd heard it.
And this was back in it was way back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary was brand new on the scene, and we did a lot of touring together back then, back in the 90s, Gary and I did. And so this feller, I don't know if he'd want me to say his name or not. He has he goes by a different stage name than his real name. But he used to tell me all the time, they would play that in their show, Quarter in My Pocket, and Gary had it on an album. And he would say, Chesnutt, I want you to cut this song so bad. Mm-hmm. And I tell him, well, I'm going to do it, brother. I'm going to do it someday. Well, it took 20 years, but I did it. I just talked to him not long ago after the CD came out. We sent him a copy of it. And he said, man, I'm sitting here listening to it over and over again with the biggest smile on my face. Mm-hmm. He said that we did it a little different than what Gary did, because I'm from Texas, and so we shuffled it up. We shuffled the whole song.
Man, I like it.
And he was so proud of it, and I'm so glad that I finally cut it. And Jimmy produced the living hell out of it. Man, he changed the song up, and like I said, being from Texas, we like to shuffle as much as we can.
I heard that. Got to keep them on that dance floor, don't you, Mark?
Yeah, exactly.
Is It Still Cheating? Gave me chills the first time I heard it, man. How did that song come to be on this album?
That was Jamie Johnson wrote that with Randy Houser, and I can't remember the other fellow. You probably have it there in front of you.
Brett Eldridge?
I didn't know that they had written this song. Mm-hmm. I knew that Jamie did, because Jamie brought the song to me several years back. And he thought it would be a great duet song with Leanne Womack. Mm-hmm. But I didn't hear it as a duet. I just loved it, and I thought, man, what a great song. I just love it. You don't hear them like this anymore.
You sure don't.
That sounds like something from the 60s or early 70s, Tammy Wynette and George Jones type music. And I just couldn't believe that nobody recorded that song. I held on to it because at the time I was on a major label, and there was no way they were going to agree with me cutting anything like that. Mm-hmm. So, because it's too country.
Yeah, man, it's country, sure. What I heard
on this one, I couldn't wait to cut it.
Man, I tell you what, you did a good job at it, Mark. Man, I love that song. And matter of fact, I have the goosebumps right now just talking about that song.
Well, I do too. Every time I hear it, I can't believe it. I just finally.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I cut my teeth on, and to have something new like that for the fans that I've had for all these years, they're getting to hear something like that. That's a brand new song. Well, not a brand new one, but nobody's ever cut it and put it out.
Right.
It's like a lot of these songs on the CD. A lot of them were written a long time ago, but they just didn't. Nobody was cutting them. Mm-hmm. So, but there's a whole lot of. I'm telling you, man, there's still a lot of great writers out there.
Sure
Jamie's one of the best.
Mm-hmm. Now your track, what I heard, that's a song I think most people in relationships can relate to. Man, that's a stone cold country song right there too. Can you tell me a little bit about that song?
That's Terry Stone wrote that song, and once again, there's another writer on there. I don't have the CD. In fact, I don't even have one. last one I had, my wife took it away from me and put it in her car. I don't even have one. I've got them on my phone.
Well, you're gonna have to buy a copy of it, Mark.
I got it. Yeah, well, I did. I went on iTunes and I downloaded my own copy of it, my own damn album. I don't even have a CD. But Terry Stone is the really important one here, because he works for me in my band. He's from Beaumont, Texas. Mm-hmm. And I've been knowing him forever. We've been friends for over 25 years. And he's quite a bit younger than me. I remember when he was just a kid playing around town. And he was in and out of my band for years, and he was with Tracy Bird for years. And then he ended up back with me, and he's been with me for, I don't know, probably 15 years or more. And he's a great songwriter and singer. And he's been trying for so long to get some big hits, and he has really wrote some great songs. Well, he brought this song to me a couple of years ago, just like I told all the other guys, Jamie and I'll go ahead and say his real name, John. He wrote Quarter in My Pocket. I told him the same thing. I'm going to cut that. I'm going to cut that. Just be patient. And man, I'm so glad we did, because that is one of the prettiest songs. I hate to call any country song pretty, but it's a pretty country song, ain't it?
Yes, sir.
It's got everything. It's got everything in it. Like you said, anybody that's in or ever have been in a relationship, that's what this whole album's about. It's people can relate to this, because it's about things that people don't write about much anymore. But that's relationships, love songs.
Yes, sir.
Hurting and loving and leaving songs. That's the
real
life stories.
I tell you what, Mark, that's something I talk about on the podcast a lot, is songs nowadays just don't have an emotion attached to them. That's what I think people are missing nowadays. And this album has emotion all over it. If you can't relate to anything on this album, you can't relate to anything, really.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't understand any of this stuff, if you've never experienced any of this, well, then you just ain't been living.
I know that's right.
And that's what I love about real country music, is that's what it is. It's a soundtrack to people's lives, the good and the bad, the happy and the sad. And country music, traditional country music, is in itself an art form. That it used to be just country music, but now it stands out so much, and it's so different than what's being called country music these days. And it's really hard to find. It's getting to be rare. But I've been playing it for my entire life, and I don't have any plans whatsoever to change anything about it. So,
well, you're doing something right, Mark. I tell you, man, you've been going at it for so long. You're doing something right.
Well, I've always heard that. I think it was Willie Nelson that said this. I might be wrong, but I think it was Willie that said, if you live long enough, you'll eventually come back in style. and and I think that's what's happened. I started this out. I got my first hit when I was 26 with Too Cold at Home, and I'm 52. That's 26 years later. And to have a new album to come out and be catching everybody's attention like it's doing, just because the only reason that people want to talk to me again is because I cut an album full of country songs. It's just not done anymore.
It's
I
not.
guess, because I love it. I love it.
Yes, sir.
I even did an interview with Rolling Stone.
Wow.
I love to tell people about that, because that's an honor for me.
Absolutely.
For them to want to talk to me and to make their charts, to be reviewed by them. It's just amazing. I'm just having so much fun. We're playing a lot of these new songs, and every week I'm going to try to add a new one.
Man, I tell you,
the album.
Mark, the song that hit me the hardest, and the one I have on repeat in my truck, is "Ought to Miss Me by Now." This song is the song you chose to debut the album with. Is this the song you feel the strongest about?
Well, we talked about that. There were some people in my camp were saying, let's come out with a single quarter first. And then some people were saying, well, how about Ought to Miss Me by Now. And Ought to Miss Me by Now was probably one of the very first songs that I found for this CD a good while back. I knew this one would be strong, and I always thought if there was going to be one single off this CD, I always thought that would be the one. It just has that certain something. It has the commercial feel to it. At the same time, it's a country song. It sounded to me like something George Strait would have done back in the 80s.
Man, it's a great song. Now, one of my other favorite songs, besides the other 12 favorites I have on this album, I know you have 13 tracks on here, so that would be all the favorites, but a song called Hot. It has been hot this summer, I'm telling you. That song is awesome.
It's another song about being hot. Ain't that something?
Yes, sir.
A song that got my career rolling 26 years ago. Too cold at home, too hot to fish. And so here we go again with another hot song, something about being hot. When I heard this song last year, or a couple of years ago, Win Varbles just writes some great songs like that. He had a lot of off-the-wall things like that. And when I heard it, I just fell out of my chair. I thought, this is funny.
Yeah.
It's so damn true about how hot it is. And I know this summer it's hot everywhere. And I know there in Nashville it's hot. It's hot as hell there too. Down here on the Texas upper Gulf Coast where I'm at, right next to Louisiana, brother, it is hot. The heat index is probably 108 right now.
Man.
And it is too hot to fish and too hot to golf. It just perfectly describes the dead of summer. And I had to cut that. I just can't. That's another one I can't believe nobody's ever cut.
Me too, man. I'm so glad you did it. There's one more on here. There won't be another now. This is a Merle Haggard song. What did you like about the song so much that made you want to record it?
Well, actually, I talked to Merle about this song. I thought it was a Merle Haggard song. I thought he'd written it. And because Merle cut it twice. He had it on 2 albums, one back in the 70s and then once in the 80s. And I always have loved this song. It was never a big hit or anything like that. And I'd never sang it. I had a buddy here down around Beaumont by the name of Ramsey Red, and he's a great, great singer. And he worked in my band for a while back in the 90s. But the first time I heard it, that song, Ramsey Red was singing it down here at a club here in Beaumont, and it knocked me out of my chair too. I just thought, oh my God, he's singing the hell out of this song. And he did such a good job. I asked him, I said, man, where'd you get that song? And he told me he got it off a Merle Haggard album. So I immediately had to get that album. And I've loved it ever since. And I was talking to Merle about it one day, and I told him, I said, that's one of my favorite songs of yours. He said, well, I didn't write that. He said, that's an old Red Lane song. And so Red had written a lot of big hits for Haggard. And so I didn't know that. And so anyway, one night, make a long story short, I still hadn't sang it yet because I didn't want to. I never heard anybody sing it as good as Merle Haggard except for my buddy Ramsey Red. And I hope he's listening, and because I hadn't seen him in a long time. But I never sang it. And one night I was hanging out at Jimmy Rich's house, my producer, and we were just brainstorming, just listening to songs. And we were listening to the Merle Haggard, Jones, and Waylon and Willie song. And I asked Jimmy if he ever heard that song, and he said, no, I don't believe I have. We found it, pulled it up on his computer, and we played it. And he listened to it, and he just said, I can hear you sing that. So he grabbed the guitar off the wall. We went in there to the studio at his house, and we cut it. Just me and Jimmy. It's Jimmy Ritchie playing the guitar and me singing it. And we ran through it a couple of times. And then we just did it for fun, just to have, just for us. And this was, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago. when Haggard and Red were still both alive and kicking.
Mm-hmm.
And when the album was finished, I said, we should go ahead and put that on there, because by then we had done lost Red and Merle.
Mm-hmm.
I said, let's go ahead and put that on there as an extra track and make it and dedicate it to Red Lang and Merle Haggard. And so I'm sure glad we did. That's a great finishing touch.
Man,
even though that they're both gone, Red heard it before he passed away, just before he passed away. But Merle never heard it, because it was never. He passed away before I could get it to him.
Man. Well, Mark, I know you enjoy the career highlights of #1 singles, gold and platinum album sales, but where do you value your time the most on the road?
I like being on the road. I love being on the road with my band. They're great people. We all ride one bus.
Mm-hmm.
We're always together in that one long tube going down the road. And we have the best time cutting up and joking around and playing music and talking about music and even writing. We have some great writers in my group.
Oh, cool, man.
And so but I like to come home and just hang around the house. I live out in the country, and it's hard for my wife to drag me out of my house.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I'm going to go fishing or hunting.
Yeah.
I like being right here at the house, just hanging around and cooking on my pit, cooking on my grill, frying fish, just sitting around drinking cold beer and enjoying the heat.
I heard that.
Love being home.
Speaking of the road, how many shows are you doing these days?
We've been doing over 100, about 100 or 120.
Man,
I think this year we'll probably top off around 125 maybe.
Man, you're burning it down out there, Mark.
Oh yeah, we are. We're burning the tires off that bus.
Okay.
I tell you, we've been going through parts and tires. There's pieces of that bus laying all over the country from here to Canada.
That's funny. Hey, tell me about Honky Tonk Mondays on YouTube.
Yeah, that's an idea that Mike McCary is a buddy of mine that takes care of my website and my fan club, and he works his ass off for me, and he's a good dude, and he does a lot of stuff for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he keeps me out there in front of people. It was his idea, and we just would get together and just tell stories. I just sit there and tell stories and talk about some of my favorite songs and times I've had with my heroes that became friends. And I don't know much longer it'll go, because I'm just running out of time to do things like that. But I don't have much time to sit and talk.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, unless you come out on the road with that camera, well, you're not going to be able to get much of this anymore, because this has been a busy year. But I enjoy it. I enjoy telling stories.
Cool, man. We enjoy watching it. All right, Mark, time permitting, can you tell me about the early years of Mark Chesnutt? Where did you grow up, and how long did it take you to get into the music business?
Well, I grew up in Beaumont, Texas, and my daddy was a singer, and I guess that's where I got it from. I got the want to, I guess, to sing from my daddy, and he was a really great singer and songwriter, and he encouraged me, because I told him I wanted to be a singer, and I started singing in honky tonks around here. When I was 16, Mom and Daddy would bring me out, and Daddy would ask the guys if I could sit in, and it started from there, and I just started singing in clubs, and eventually I quit the day jobs and started playing music for a living, and here I am, still doing it.
Cool, man. Who's on your Mount Rushmore of artists now? They can be from any genre, and you can pick only 4. Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
Only 4?
Yes, sir. Only 4.
All right, well, of course it's got to be George Jones, Merle Haggard, Waylon Jennings, and Willie Nelson.
Man, that's a Mount Rushmore right there. That is definitely
yes,
a Mount Rushmore. Hey, Mark, I've heard you say you're not very social media savvy, but if someone wants to follow you on social media, how can they find you?
They can just go on there. They can Google my name, markchesnutt.com, will pop up, and then you take it from there yourself. It will take you through all my sites and my fan club, and you'll know everywhere I'm going to be, what's going on, and you'll be able to you'll know more about me than I do. It's about an hour. So just put my name in there, and it'll pop up.
Hot dog. Mark, where can people buy this new album, Tradition Lives?
You can go to my website, like I said, markchesnutt.com, and you can get the information there. You can order it, and you'll get a signed copy sent to you. You can come out to my show. We have them for sale there, along with all our merchandise, and you can download it on all the sites that have music for downloading, iTunes and all that. That's what I did. I went to iTunes, bought my own damn record.
Mark, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you and what you have contributed to country music, and I really hope this album does well for you. You deserve it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Chesnutt.
Thank you, brother.
A big thank you to Mark Chesnutt for calling in today to the Nitty Gritty for Music City Studios. And another big thank you to the Mark Chesnutt Camp for getting me in touch with Mark Chesnutt. Man, I'm telling you, 14 number one hits, 23 top 10s, 4 platinum albums, and 5 gold albums. You can't go wrong. Folks, if you like country music, I'm not even going to beg you. I'm just going to say, if you like country music, go out and purchase Tradition Lives. You can get it on markchesnutt.com. You can go to iTunes, download it there. And I'm telling you, great album. I've had it in my truck for about 2 weeks now, and I haven't taken it out of the CD player. Hadn't turned it off. Tradition Lives, Mark Chesnutt. Mark, if you're listening to the podcast, thank you so much for calling in. Would love to hear back from you some other time. You, the listener, we couldn't do this without you, so thank you very much for supporting our sponsors, and thank you so much for tuning in each week. To do that, automatically, all you have to do is go to iTunes, hit the subscribe button, and the Nitty Gritty for Music City will be downloaded each week to your favorite podcast player for absolutely free. That's zip, y'all, zilch. We're coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. We'll be coming to you next week. We have some more big artists lined up. I'm telling you, folks, this thing is taking off beyond my belief, and I'm so happy and so thankful for it. Until next week, my name is Brent Browning, and we'll be Tennesseeing you right here on the Nitty Gritty for Music City. Listen to me now. Sings along with the wailing songs, never fails to turn me on. So we parked for a while in them trees. Smell of sun on her skin, the sound of a voice whispering is all I'll ever need. Two ways you can live your life. You can play it safe and avoid the fight, so you can bang your head and do what they tell you to do. That ain't for me and her. We fly down the road side by side, and then if we find don't know what tomorrow brings, only know where we'll be. In my 55